Hey guys, Ashlane here, coming at you today, helping you get to Royal Arena. I'm going to highlight one of my favorite decks. I've actually brought you a deck similar to this in a previous episode, and I'm really a huge fan of it. It's a great winning deck. So we're going to be using the Elixir Collector from the Builder's Workshop. That's going to help maintain an Elixir advantage throughout the battle for you guys. We're going to be using the Ice Wizard from Spell Valley. If you don't have Ice Wizard, you can use Bomber in the same space. It's important to get that splash damage through that spot. You'll be using the Hog Rider. That's going to be your main offensive troop in this deck. And then your next troop is going to be the Barbarians. Now, Barbarians are very versatile, especially in this deck. You're going to be using them both offensively and defensively, so don't want to forget those Barbarians, and certainly level up the Barbarian card because it's so useful in so many different types of decks. Then moving right along, the next card is going to be the Giant Skeleton. The Giant Skeleton is going to be, along with the Hog, both very versatile like the Barbarians, and like the Hog, it's going to be one of your main sources of offense in this deck. A very, very strong card, and that bomb that it drops can help you out defensively too if you're in a bind. We'll see examples of that coming up soon. Also, you're going to have Goblins. You need a low elixir card in pretty much every deck, unless you have a lot of defensive units to help mitigate for not having that low elixir card. But the low elixir card, in this case the Goblins, are going to be a very important distracting card and defensive card. Arrows are going to be your direct damage card, and Arrows, such a versatile unit. You can also use Fireball if you'd rather. We're also going to be playing the Archers in this deck. We need an air targeting troop, and preferably one that's a little bit low on elixir. You can also use Spirit Goblins in this slot, but I prefer Archers because we already have a decent average elixir cost on this deck. So I prefer using the Archers as opposed to the Spirit Goblins. They do a lot more damage, and they also have a lot more health. So not to mention mine are level 10, and my Spirit Goblins are only level 9. So oftentimes, you know, if you have a card that's a little bit higher level than another card that serves a similar role, you might as well use the high level card. You don't necessarily have to use every single card the same as the decks that you see them successful in. So here's my activity log here. You can see doing pretty well with this deck. Certainly a loss here and there, but overall looking pretty good here. A lot of victories and quite a few draws as well. That's because a deck like this, you're not going to win, you're not going to 3-crown every single time. More often than not, you're going to score a 1-0 or a 2-1 victory. It's tough to get that King Tower with this deck because you just don't have the troops to make a huge surge. This is one of those decks where it's more of a stealth deck where you're kind of picking and prodding at the 2 towers and trying to take advantage of your opponent with elixir advantages here and there. So on this first replay here, we're going to be playing against an interesting deck here. It has Balloon, Musketeer, Valkyrie, Barbarian, Freeze, and also has the 3 Musketeer card along with the Musketeer card. And I'll tell you what, it's not a very challenging deck to combat with this deck. Obviously, each deck has a pretty good counter. There's no absolutely perfect or best deck in the world, but this is a really good deck to help you to get to Royal Arena. It's just a really solid and balanced deck. You know, like I said, you're not going to pull off a lot of 3-crown victories with this deck, but you can certainly be patient. If you're a patient player, you should be able to win more often than you lose with this deck, and that's really the name of the game in this game. You're going to lose no matter what deck you have, and just because you lose doesn't mean you should necessarily start switching your deck around. So you can see right here, I'm being very patient. I'm reloading. I have a nice healthy elixir advantage right now, and I have that one pump down. You can see I was able to get my Giant Skeleton to that left tower, and the Giant Skeleton drops those giant bombs, does a lot of damage. Now, I've since substituted Fireball into this deck instead of Arrows. Now, the reason I've done that is because I'm running into a lot of Barbarians and a lot of 3 Musketeers. Because this episode is centered around getting to Royal Arena, odds are you're not running into a ton of 3 Musketeer cards, but still it can be very effective against Barbarians, like you can see in the right lane here. So this is a really well-balanced deck, like I said. This is why on your road to Royal Arena for the first time, or maybe you're just, maybe you're running into a slump right now, this is a really, really solid deck. You can see I use it up in Legendary Arena with absolutely no issues at all. I win, as you saw from my attack log, way more often than I lose, and that's the beautiful thing about this deck, because if you look at TV Royale, you're gonna be hard pressed to find a deck in there that you can use in earlier arenas. A lot of them are centered around the Princess card, although I will show at the end of today's video a variation of this deck. If you are in Legendary Arena and you do have the Princess card, I'll show a replay of HGB going against a level 9 going against a level 11, I believe, and he pulls out the victory using this deck, so with the Princess card. Now, the Princess card would be substituted for the Archer card, so if you don't have the, if you do have Princess for whatever reason you're watching this, go ahead and put the Princess in there for the Archer. You'll have even more success with this deck. Let's go ahead to the next replay. That was a rare 3-crown victory. They're not always going to be quite that easy, but this one, another Legendary Arena battle here. Let's see what I do here. Now, when you have the Elixir Collector in your starting hand, you want to play that. That should be your first card you play, but you do want to wait that 5 seconds until your Elixir gets to full, because when you play that Elixir Collector card, you will be at a slight disadvantage for a few seconds. So you want to make sure they're not going to come at you really hard with a push. Now, if they do come at you really hard with a push, go ahead and use your Giant Skeleton. That's the whole idea behind the Giant Skeleton on defense. If someone's coming at you, let's pretend they're coming at you with a Prince and a Dark Prince and minions or something like that, or anything really, even a baby dragon. It doesn't really matter, because even though it's not going to target or kill the baby dragon, the Giant Skeleton that is, it is going to distract it for long enough for you to recoup some elixir. You can see another move that I like to do with this deck is sometimes, if I, not every single time, but if I don't have the Elixir Collector in my starting hand, but I do have the Giant Skeleton and the Hog card, I've actually been having a lot of success with putting one in each lane. In other words, in the left lane, I'll put the Giant Skeleton, and then immediately afterwards, I'll put the Hog in the right lane. Really tough to defend against both of those cards at the same time. You can see here, he's able to use a very well-placed freeze spell there, and he took down my left tower. But I have both of his towers down quite a significant amount of hit points as well. And again, I'm going to do a 2-lane push. That is another really important note on this deck. You want to really take advantage of using 2-lane pushes. You have Barbarians, you have Giant Skeleton, and you have Hog Rider. So you have 3, beefy offensive weapons, so don't be afraid to use them in opposite lanes. With this deck, if you can get that Giant Skeleton to a tower, that's a huge win. And if you can distract somebody with a Hog, for example, when you know you're going to play the Giant Skeleton in the other lane, that can be a really nice stealth move to sneak a Giant Skeleton into a tower. You can use it vice versa as well. So let's go ahead and show you that replay I mentioned earlier with HGB. In case you already have the Princess card for whatever reason, this will be a good example of how to use the Princess card in the same deck. So otherwise, the deck is going to be the same, but like I said, there will be the Princess, as you can see, instead of the Archer card. So let's go ahead and see how HGB starts this out. Is he going to start the same way that we do with an Elixir Collector? Indeed, he does. He plays it behind the King Tower. I like to play it in front. Doesn't really matter. Now you can see he plays the Hog Rider here to distract those units, but he wasn't prepared for that other Hog Rider coming behind the troops there and that freeze spell, and he's actually going to sacrifice this right tower really early on. So this is a really nice come from behind victory here, and you can see how versatile the deck is. He loses the Elixir Collector, or very close to, and he's still going to be able to go ahead and recoup and not panic, calm himself down, and that's one of the big keys that I want to talk to you throughout the rest of this replay, is this game can be so frustrating. In fact, in a video I'm working on right now, I had 2 people rage quit against me in a row, and it just goes to show you that, some people might already be so frustrated, like in a match like this, that they'd rage quit and just turn off the game. And I think that's the reason that there's no quit battle button built in. You have to actually close down the app, because if there was a built-in close button, I think you'd see even more rage quits. But this is a good example how you should stick with it and don't give up. up. You know, never, never, never give up. If you want to make it to Royal Arena or Builder Workshop or even Legendary Arena, it's all about patience and continuing to play. The more you play, the better you get. It doesn't feel like you're getting better every single match, but you are, especially if you stick with the same proven winning deck. A deck like this, for example, maybe you'll go through 2 or 3 losses in a row. It's not going to be the end of the world, and whether you know it or not, you're getting better. It's kind of like how you don't notice your hair growing. Every single day, your hair doesn't seem to be a little bit any longer than it was the previous day, but in fact, it is growing. And it's kind of like your skill level in, or even like, you know, practicing basketball or something like that. You don't feel like you're necessarily making leaps and bounds, but the Clash Royale is truly the same exact way. You are getting better the more you practice, and the best way to practice is obviously to play. So even if your chests are full, I would recommend continuing playing as long as you're enjoying yourself, you know. And if you need to put the game down, of course, do that too. And I guess that's the opposite side of the coin, right? I mean, sometimes when you start losing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 matches in a row, you can tend to start playing poorly because you're aggravated and you start being way too aggressive. So it's always important to remind yourself to take a deep breath, calm down, and reload. Be patient. In this game, you'll always be doing yourself a favor if you constantly remind yourself to slow down. That would be my #1 piece of advice to getting to Royal Arena, is slow down. Always, always, always try to slow down, play it safe. If you have to play for a draw on some matches, if you're the underdog, go ahead and play for a draw. And look at HGB here. He stuck with it. He was able to pick up the tie, and then he's able to make a really nice push on the left lane. And in just a second, he's going to pull off a very nice come-from-behind victory. So guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you were able to pick up a tip or two. As always, take care.
We don't play for fame, we don't play for cash. We just play